Welcome everyone on the event organized by the Urban Planning and the Design Department and CoHousing Budapest Association. This is the second session of our event series where we discover co-housing developments inside Europe. The subject of this event is Discovering Vienna, concept of developers competition and co-housing. And let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Annamária Babos, and I'm a doctoral student of the Architectural Doctoral School at the Department of Urban Planning and Design. And I'm also a founding member of an NGO called CoHousing Budapest Association. With the aim of developing the Hungarian co-housing model, the Co-housing Budapest Association was established 1 year ago by 15 founding members. So therefore, we are very glad that Markus accepted our invitation and will give us a presentation. And let me introduce Markus a little bit. Markus Zilker and the Einstein's architektur is one of the specialized office of participative planning in Vienna. The office successfully launches community-based housing projects, whether in urban areas or in the countryside. But let's hear more about it from Markus and from his presentation. So Markus, the floor is yours.
So, thanks Annamária for the introduction. Can you hear me and see the sheets?
Yeah, it's working.
It's working, fine. So, yeah, thanks for the invitation to talk to you about, on the one hand, about the system of subsidized housing in Vienna and developers. And in the second part, to talk about our work as architects in the field of co-housing. Yeah, as your title says, it's Discovering Vienna, Concept of Developers Competition and Co-housing. So it's a mixture of two themes. And I will start to give you an overview over the system of subsidized housing in Vienna first and the developers competition. So the first half an hour we will spend with this with the theme, and then I will show you some concrete examples of our work. So I think we are facing the same or at least similar challenges everywhere when we talk about housing. The major challenges nowadays for sure are economical challenges, social challenges, and ecological challenges. And when we have a closer look at economical challenges, I think everywhere we talk about affordability to prevent speculation, increasing land costs. And yeah, some statistic, for example, in Vienna, the number of single households doubled in the last 50 or 60 years. And the average living space per person or per capita also doubled from 1970 on. So that means a lot to the consumption of space in our cities, and also for economical questions and affordability. And yeah, increasing prices and so on. I think it's very similar in many cities all over Europe, but also in other countries. We also face nowadays a lot of social challenges in housing. We have a lot of demographic changes, diseases, not only COVID, dissolution of classical families. And for example, between 2014 and 2024, the share of people older than 75 in Austria will raise by 37%. So it's really the largest growing part of our population. And also, for example, that's just examples, the number of people with Alzheimer will triple in the next decades. So it's really just to give you some example for social challenges. And of course, we are also facing ecological challenges. Climate change, above all. A huge theme, especially also in Austria, is land consumption. We have still incredible land consumption through caused by the building of highways, by parking lots, etc., and also housing. So it's a question of efficiency on the one hand, to build energy efficient buildings with low ecological footprint, to think about cradle-to-cradle principles, passive house standards, etc. But it's also a question, as I told before, it's also a question of sufficiency. So, for example, how can community spaces unburden the personal living space? Just to give you an example, it's not very low, but it's not a very low number. But in the Wohnprojekt Wien, for example, we have 32 to 35 square meters per person, and the average in Vienna at the moment is 45. So of course you can even go further, but it's a question of sufficiency. So what does the framework in Vienna look like for housing and subsidized housing? In Vienna, you can find a very specific housing situation, which is, I think, unique worldwide, which in terms of the number of flats owned by the city of Vienna due to the Red Vienna in the beginning of 20th century, and the really huge number of also subsidized housing realized in the last decades. So altogether, it's nearly 500,000 of flats within the sector of subsidized housing. So either owned by the city of Vienna itself or owned by corporations cooperatives, not corporations, cooperatives that own the subsidized housing and rent out these flats. So more than 50% of the flats are within this very controlled and very subsidized and very affordable market segment. Yeah, and a specific phenomenon of the Viennese development over the last years is, of course, the developers' competitions, which secure more affordability than there would be without these specific competitions. So some numbers. Housing in Vienna has grown very rapidly in the last years. This is not the very last. I don't have totally actual numbers, but you can see what happened between 2010 and 2017. It's the numbers of planned housing units. And yeah, the figures would look quite similar from 2017 on. Now it's not growing that fastly anymore, that quickly anymore, but we still have very, very dynamic market situation regarding the free financed housing market, but also regarding the subsidized housing market. So when we talk about subsidized housing in the last decades, we had approximately 50% of our housing production in Vienna was subsidized by the city of Vienna. So it's not a classical social housing phenomenon. It's not only for poor people or poor people with really not such a high income. It's more a middle class phenomenon. So it's the regulations for subsidized housing include more or less 85 or 90% of inhabitants of Vienna. So nearly not everybody, but a large number of people can enter this market segment of subsidized housing. So to show you something how the system works, of course we have a city councillor for housing, and in this case for women as well. At the moment it's Katrin Gahl, a social democrat. And this is the political sphere, and we have this really important part of the administration within this housing segment, which is called Wohn voor Wien, and it's the central part of the administration when it comes to subsidies for housing. So at the moment it's led by Gregor Puscher and Dieter Großschopf, and it was founded in 1984, and we will see a short film afterwards. And this Wohn voor Wien has three main duties, or also three main goals. First of all, it's about the procurement and provision of land for subsidized housing. So that means that they buy huge amounts of land in advance, sometimes really decades in advance, or at least 5, 6, 7 years in advance. In advance before beginning a project, before beginning the development of new residential areas. So the second aim is the development of new residential areas within this system of subsidies. And the third duty, or the third part, is the renovation of existing residential buildings. So when we have a closer look at this middle part that I'm talking about tonight, the development of new residential areas, we can say that there are two main ways to decide over which projects get subsidies and get these public subsidies. It's a land advisory board for projects that are developed by the developers themselves. So without competitions, when a developer buys a piece of land and develops a project, then they have to go to this land advisory board and get a permission to get these subsidies for their project. And the second way is the developers competition since 1995. And this is the way competitions are held when the city of Vienna itself had bought a piece of land or a large area before, many years before, and develops this land. So they are doing developers competitions. So this specific kind of competition exists now for 25 years. There was an anniversary this year and an exhibition going with it. And within these competitions, there is an interdisciplinary jury that judges these projects. And to give in a project, you can apply as an interdisciplinary project team for a specific site with a specific proposal. So, and when we go even further with inside this development of new residential areas and this way of developers competition, we can see how this interdisciplinary jury judges the project. So all the projects that are given in are judged by this 4 pillars model, it's called like that, by these 4 main criteria. It's architecture, economy, ecology, and since 2009, social sustainability. Yeah, and to give you a better overview over how this system works, we will show a short film of 6 minutes about the Wohn voor Wien and its main aspects. There are English subtitles with it, so you can, it's in German, but there are English subtitles, so you can follow the content of the movie. So now I would like to ask you to start the first film.
I can't hear it. Markus, you can hear it?
No, I can't.
Arpi, could you just make it more loud?
So I hope you can hear more than I can. But yeah, actually, you can read the English subtitles and have a look at the project. So you see also some numbers, what happened since 1995. You can hear me, but you can't hear the sound of the video, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So maybe I tell something and make some comments on it. So Dieter Großschott from the One for Wien is talking about these 4 pillars: architecture, economy, social sustainability, and ecology. And there are a lot of they do a lot of publications. So they every year there's a book published with all the projects that were given in. So there's really a good documentation and publication of all the work that is done. And there are a lot of very different projects developed in the last years. So here, for example, you see Seestadt Aspern, which is one of that's one co-housing project of. This one is actually one of our projects, Seestadt Aspern. And Dieter Großschott is also talking about this interaction between projects. So it's not only about housing projects, it's also about community building and this urbanistic scale. And he mentions this in the Wiesen Süd, which is in the south of Vienna, an area where the One for Wien especially had a lot of interest and focus on this urbanistic development of communities. And so this part of the film is talking about the renovation, and Werner Auer is talking about this. Yeah, I think you can read it, but I will tell something additionally about these renovation aspects, where the city of Vienna has a lot of tradition in subsidized renovation of historical buildings, but also buildings from the 50s or 60s. In terms of, yeah, you can also see some number, 7,200 projects completed in the last 35 years in the renovation part. And maybe it's important to say that all this funding volume, it's not money that is given away directly to the projects, but it's loans. It's very cheap loans that the city of Vienna gets back after 30 years, after 35 years, and after, in the meanwhile, at the moment it's after 40 years. So the subsidies that are invested today, I think 3/4 of the subsidies they come is the yeah they come back from loans that are paid back from former times. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, at the moment about 5 to 7,000 housing units per year developed within the system of subsidized housing. So they are undergoing this either these developer competitions or this land advisory board. And Gregor Buscher, the head or the managing director of the One for Wien, yeah, is talking about this tradition, but also at the same time this yeah this new tendencies in subsidized housing. The Viennese mayor, Michael Ludwig, at the moment, mayor, he was this executive councillor for housing before he got mayor. So for 10 years, I think, and he invented this 4th pillar in this in this four pillar system. So the social sustainability was his idea in 2009. And he focuses again on this very important strategic role on the procurement and provision of land, which is possibly the most important role of the Wohn für Wien. Yeah, and he says maybe that's one of the main reasons why Vienna is such a livable city, because it's through these strategic decisions, it's still quite affordable. I mean, it's not totally affordable, but it's quite affordable for a lot of people. So I think you could see some nice pictures, even without the sound to it. So I would start the presentation again. So can you see my screen again? Hello?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, fine. So the developers competition. As I mentioned, this four-pillar model for subsidized housing. It's about architecture, economy, ecology, and since so these three criteria, or these three pillars, they exist since the start of this model in 1995, and since 2009 we have the four-pillar model. So the aspect of social sustainability was added to architecture, economy, and ecology. And you can see some examples for how this project are judged. It's about user costs, the construction costs. It's about the building structure and the layout of apartments for sure. It's about cost reduction by planning and financing. That's so developers have to think about how they can reduce costs through alternative financing instruments. Sometimes it's about living in community, or on this ecological level. A very important role plays the landscape planning, or climate and resource efficient building, and so on. So there are a lot of sub-criteria for this jury. And the jury consists of 15 to 20 people, so it's a very big jury and it's very interdisciplinary. And developers competitions, they are done by interdisciplinary project teams. So when we do a competition, when we take part, we work together with a developer, which is a non-profit developer or an cooperation in most cases. Also with a landscape architect, sometimes with sociologists, engineers, and sometimes also with users or social organizations. Yeah, and working together in these teams is not always easy, and it's very but it's very interesting, and it brings good and interesting results. And it needs it brings some challenges with it. It needs a vision, this interdisciplinary project team, and asks from everybody the ability to cooperate. And sometimes you also have to think about new formats for this planning process, so how you can work together in such big groups. It's getting even more diverse and complex when it's about whole areas where there's also cooperation between the single housing units. So that's a graphic from one area in the south of Vienna, Wildgarten, where there was really a very cooperative and very communication-based process. And I would say it's really intense and it makes a lot of work, but it's worth it because it makes better projects and better results in many ways. it not always makes better architecture, but it makes better projects on this in this combination of social these social questions with ecological questions, with economical questions, and architectonical questions. Yeah, and we really believe in that as Richard Sennett says, and also Harari, that man is the only species that is able to collaborate in bigger numbers. And that's maybe the main reason why we are the, I don't know, the most important species, or at least the most powerful species in the world. From time to time, these developers competitions have a specific focus. For example, housing units for single parents or students, or for intergenerational housing, or for intercultural living. Sometimes they have an ecological focus. For example, with a focus on timber structures, or from time to time, there are also small specific competitions for co-housing projects, which started the specific competitions for co-housing projects. They're a little bit different to the normal developer competitions, but they started back in 2011, and there's maybe like one competition a year for one smaller site. So I had the chance to practice before the simultaneous translation, and we can do that again. We can have a look at the second film about 25 years of developers competition, and yeah, it's the last film, and afterwards you will hear me again. But I will make some comments to this film as it doesn't have any English subtitles. So,
Arpi, megosztott-e?
Could you start the second film, please?
Sorry, I started the movie, but I didn't share it.
No problem.
Now, also sound should be okay.
Okay, so you can see Katrin Gall, the city councillor of for housing and women again, and she talks about that housing in many cities, housing is a luxury, or it's not affordable anymore. And in Vienna, it's still quite different due to this more than 100 years of history in subsidies, and this very long tradition in subsidized housing. So she also says when you look at the numbers, what happened in this system of developers competition, it's really amazing. There were 80 competitions in the last 25 years with over 300 buildings and 40,000 subsidized flats within these projects. So you can see, yeah. So one of the first projects within this system, it's the car-free city. It was a very ecological project back in the mid of the 90s. Autofreie Musterstadt. And maybe you know this guy. It's Wolf Brix, the head of Coop Himmelblau, and he was for 5 years he was the jury chairman of this interdisciplinary jury. And normally he's not very known for housing, but he says actually in Vienna it was always about that housing was the core of city development. And Elsa Prohaska, who was also part of this jury, says that when she was young, she was frightened when anybody asked her to do take over a design contract for housing, because the level of housing was so low in Vienna until the 90s. But then with this developer competitions in 95, it changed totally. Yeah, Kunibert Wachten says that, of course, it's an experiment if you invent such a new system of competitions. but there was a lot of there were a lot of politicians convinced that it needed a change in this way that housing was developed in the 90s. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I can repeat it, these 3 pillars: architecture, economy, and ecology. And then in 2009, we got this 4th pillar, social sustainability. And Rudolf Scheuwens, which will take over the jury chairmanship next year again, said in the beginning it was really, nobody knew what was meant when they talked about social sustainability. But yeah, it was a theme and to develop, especially in larger areas like the Sonnenviertel. There are a lot of common spaces and a lot of space for yeah, for people to meet, for people to use. And yeah, actually, that's the Seestadt Aspern again, one of the co-housing projects we realized in the Seestadt Aspern. This one not anymore. And yeah, Wolf Brix, who you will see in some seconds again, really points out that it's not a classical competition. This developers competition. It's really exceptional that this interdisciplinary jury works as a team and also judges projects that are developed in interdisciplinary teams. So it's really, from his point of view, it's really a big difference to normal architecture competitions and jury meetings. And yeah, then we will see Kurt Puchinger, who was chairman in the last 5 years. And he said that's really a big issue what this jury is doing, because they take care of this system of subsidies, and they decide which project team and which project gets these subsidies from the city of Vienna. So he says it's it's a big quality of the system in Vienna that we have this huge jury that judges these projects. Kunibert Wachten talks about the parts of the jury, or the people within this jury. He says there are ecologists, economists, sociologists, architects, developers, and they speak totally different languages. That's maybe interesting, and they have a lot of different point of views. So here's, you see the Wohnprojekt Wien. That's a project that our office developed and was finished in 2013. I will show you some pictures afterwards. You see some, that's our common kitchen, for example, in the ground floor, and our courtyard, and yeah, for example, this building with the yellow balconies, it's a normal subsidized housing without co-housing, without a co-housing approach. And all of them mentioned that the Wohn for Wien is probably the most important. It plays the most important role in this whole system of subsidized housing. And Rudi Scheuwens, who we will see next, says that this mentions again this very important strategic role of the procurement or provision of the land. So he says this developers competition is maybe only a small part of this very important role that the Wohn for Wien is playing. And even more important is this procurement and provision of land in advance. Yeah, so we could stop the video here. Thank you very much.
You can share your screen now again.
Yes. So I hope you can see my screen again.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we come to the second part. I hope I could give you a good overview over the system of subsidized housing in Vienna and developers competitions. And yeah, for me it was it was the first time to talk also in English about this system of developers competition and to give such an overview. So I hope I could do that in a way that you could understand how it works quite well. So in this second part of the lecture, we will have another 25 or 30 minutes. I will tell you something about our work at 1:1 Architektur. And first of all, I want to talk about the role of the architect. Back in 2009, Katharina Bayer, my colleague, and me, we were in Berlin. I had a different color of my hair back then. And we were thinking about what we would like to do with our office. Our office was 3 or 4 years old then, and we really asked ourselves always these really strategic questions: where we would like to go, which themes were really important for us. And one of these really important themes for us was participation in a bigger sense, not in a sense where where you come to work with big groups of people and to let them participate in a planning and building or planning process. So the role of the architect was understood in quite different ways now in the last decades. When we have a look at Mies van der Rohe and his posture in front or behind his work, then it's this role of an creator, a genius. Okay, I think I have a problem with the connection right now. Can you still hear me? No.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we have.
But can you still see?
Yeah, we see the shared screen and we can hear you.
Okay.
Now it's stopped. Now the sharing, it works again.
It works again. Okay, I had a problem with the connection. Sorry. I mean, I really like the work of Mies van der Rohe, but nevertheless, we don't understand ourselves as architects in that way. And so of course, there were totally different understandings of what the role as an architect can look like. That's a picture of a participatory process in the 80s in Germany, with Frei Otto in the background. And it's the opposite. No, if you wouldn't know, you wouldn't know who's the architect and who's an engineer or who will live there. So this participatory working is a total different understanding of this role of an architect. Actually, today we don't have to be afraid to participate anymore, as this small book says, keine Angst vor Partizipation, the little ABC, because we have a lot of methods, and not we as an architectural firm, but together a lot of people have developed a lot of methods and tools for participation in the last decades. So it's not just the same system like in the 70s or 80s anymore, where you have to invent everything. So 1:1, we are 3 partners at the moment: Katharina, Markus, and me. Markus and Markus. It's easy to it's easy because we have the same name. And we work with a quite young team of more or less 20 people. And about half of the projects we are doing is within this system of co-housing projects. So that's the office we are working in, and I'm also I'm sitting in at the moment. And a short overview of our current project. So we are working on 7 to 8 projects simultaneously. Yeah. And the projects are changing from time to time. And as I mentioned, about half of it is co-housing projects. If you want to read or if you can read in German, unfortunately, it's not. There's no translation to English or other languages. There's a really nice book from Barbara Notecker, Siebenstock, called Siebenstock Dorf. And there you can read a little bit more about our work, or how she, as an not architect who participated in this planning process and building process in Wohnprojekt Wien, how she, yeah, how this whole process was for her, and how she, what she realized, or what she had, what impressions she had. Yeah, we spent in 2009, besides the normal planning of architecture, on this planning of co-housing projects. So the situation for co-housing projects in Vienna, or what is a co-housing project? Maybe we start with a definition. Co-housing projects are co-initiated and co-created by the future users. And normally they have two major goals: building together and living together, or you can say planning together and living together. And co-housing projects in Vienna, they are realized within a system of this subsidized housing market. So as I mentioned before, we have a very high percentage of subsidized housing in Vienna. These co-housing projects, they don't have an economic advantage compared to subsidized housing. But of course, they have economic advantages when they are realized within the subsidized housing market segment compared to free financed housing. In Vienna, we mostly talk about collective ownership. So it's co-housing projects that don't work with individual ownership. And they want to prevent speculation, which is very important. There's a growing interest in co-housing in Vienna. There were only two surveys back in 2009 and 2014. But it's even if you talk only about 5%, it would be 5,000 people per year that are really highly interested in co-housing in Vienna, and change their Hauptwohnsitz, I don't know, change their apartment in this year. So, and we can offer in Vienna maybe, I don't know, projects for 50 people per year or 100 people per year. So there's really much more interest than there are projects. The benefits of co-housing, maybe Anna-Maria can add something to it afterwards. But we really believe in that there are a lot of benefits for the users, for grown-ups, for elderly people, for kids. When living within a community, in a lively neighborhood, when you can share infrastructure. And yeah, it's also a question of affordability, because you can use your individual space a little bit, because you can share a guest apartment, or a workshop, or a common kitchen, or whatever. So when you share it with a lot of people, I mean, for example, in the Wohnprojekt Wien, it's 100 people living in the house. So then it gets it gets more affordable when you share a lot of things, and you don't have to have them within your individual flat, for example, and a small room for, I don't know, for a guest or something. Yeah, and there's participation in the planning process. But there are also benefits for the developers, and in the last years there were a lot of developers in Vienna that have realized they have a lot of benefits when they work with co-housing groups. They have absolutely no costs for marketing. They have high identification and customer satisfaction. They can really learn from the users. And what happens here is that they enhance their image incredibly. Yeah, so the developers that frequently work with co-housing groups and projects, they are really very known in Vienna. Yeah, and for society and politics, It's all about the revaluation of neighborhood, local social networks, also about integration and inclusion of refugees, of people with handicaps. And of course, it's about sustainability and also about democratic competences. Yeah, and this also, I would say it's also, there are a lot of benefits for architects because it's really fun to work in very different contexts, from the Mongolian Jurt to the bank directors. So you have a contact with very different parts of society and yeah. How we work. We work with participatory processes from the first moment till completion of the projects. So we work with the groups on their vision long before we draw a line or we draw any plan. We work on their vision. Okay. We also work with workshops with up to 50 or 60 people, with big workshops in small working groups. We work with very different methods. For example, this is a method of systemic consensus, which was developed in Graz, I think 10 or 15 years ago, which enables bigger groups to make decisions, even though it's really complicated. For example, when you when you have a look at the distribution of flats within a building. Our main method is the meetings, or is the meeting with a working group, where we talk about architecture, we talk about atmospheres, we talk about functions, we talk about, I don't know, materials, colors, whatever. We also work with quite huge models because we think it's necessary, how can I say that in English? Democratization of planning. I don't know if that's understandable, but to make a planning process more democratic so that normal users that are not architect can participate easily. And we also work with individual participation. So we plan on an individual level the flats of the future users within this co-housing project. This process of participation is quite a long process, over 3 or 4 years, and it has different phases. So this phase of visions, then the second phase would be the phase of the concept. The third and longest phase is the phase of planning. The fourth phase is the phase of erecting or building this housing and co-housing project. And the fifth phase, where our work fades out, is the phase of using the building. And we have developed over the last 10 or 11 years a lot of methods and workshops for these 3 or 4 years of participatory work. Yeah, how we work. It's about organization. How do we organize these groups? We always draw these organization charts with the most important groups or corporations and co-housing groups and sociologists and everything. We do a lot of questionnaires, handouts, newsletters, fact sheets, so to give the best possible information to the group members. And the groups themselves, they're organized, most of the time they're organized with sociocracy, which is a organizational and decision-making method developed in the 1980s in the Netherlands, and came to Austria, I think, 10 years ago. And the Wohnprojekt Wien was the first bigger group in Austria to work with this method. We started back in 2010. And nowadays, I think nearly every co-housing group in Austria is organized with sociocracy and not with basis democracy anymore. But it's a little bit there are a little bit differences. Yeah, but I think I'll go on. So I can show you two projects. The Wohnprojekt Wien, which was the first project, the first co-housing project we worked on in starting in 2010, and there was a vision in the beginning, being a nucleus of sustainability, living individuality within community, creating communicative space, and the whole project, and both in an architectonical way and also in a social way, is the translation of these three sentences into architecture and into social structures. Yeah, the project team. We had a system, a quite clear system with an inner corridor, and which was quite adaptable through not load-bearing inner walls, and yeah. And within this clear and easy system, we had a lot of individualization. So there are no two same flats or two similar flats even. That's what it looked like in 2010 when we gave in this competition entry. And that's what we looked like after winning the competition in 2010. Yeah, and that's what it looks like today. It's one of the most known co-housing projects in Austria. It's situated in the 2nd district with 39 individual apartments and a lot of common rooms, 700 square meters, and 350 square meters of commerce and office. For example, we have a small grocery store or our office. Yeah, it's there are about 100 people that live in the Wohnprojekt Wien. And in the beginning, we had these informative meetings. We had these bigger workshops that I showed you before. These huge models. This model at the left side had a length of 2 meters and was 1.30 meter high. And after the completion of Wohnprojekt Wien, it was shown in the AZW, in the Architekturzentrum Vienna, for 1 or 2 years. It was really huge, and people could take out their individual flats of out of this load-bearing structure, and could take them home. And yeah, as you see, they could put some carpets inside and even build some lamps or whatever they liked. We have these 39 individual flats. At the left side, you see the inner corridor with these openings with these vertical openings within this circulation space. That's a picture of the grocery store. The common rooms, we have a huge function room or event space in the basement. The community kitchen you saw before in the video. A playroom. Yeah, I go through these pictures quite quickly because just to give an impression of the house. And a really large room for bicycles in the ground floor because yeah, we wanted to be a nucleus for sustainability. So we were talking a lot about sustainable mobility and how we can yeah, make it more attractive to use bikes. We have 2 cargo bikes that we share, for example. We have a workshop in the basement, sauna in the attic, a library in the attic, urban gardening in the courtyard. Yeah, and that was what the building looks like. And yes, it looks quite, it looks like luxury, no? But when you think about how much all these things cost, and you divide it through, you divide it per 100 people, then it's not luxury anymore. So all of us adults invested, to give you a number, we invested 3,000 euros per head, per adult, for all these community spaces. So yes, it's an amount of money, but at the same time, for 3,000 euros, when you think about your individual flat and what you can afford there on your own, yeah, you don't get very much for 3,000 euros. So talking about sustainability, we always talk about ecology, social questions, and economy. And maybe I jump over these sheets or go over quite quickly. We have a very good energy standard and all kinds of alternative energy systems with heat pump, photovoltaic, and so on. Ecological building material and so on. And we prevent speculation through collective ownership. So we own the whole building together. So we developed it together with a developer, with the Schwarzertal, a non-profit developer. But then we bought the whole building from this developer, and now we own it collectively as an association of the users. And we run the whole building together, which is a lot of work. And yeah, regarding social sustainability, we have also 2 solidarity flats. We also have, for example, one of our guest apartments used for a Syrian family for the last 5 years. So there are some people living within our house which couldn't afford to live here under normal circumstances, but they are supported by the neighborhood or by the people living here. The second project I want to show you is Gleis 21, one of our newest or co-housing project, which was finished last year in 2019. And it's quite similar to the Wohnprojekt Wien, but it has a quite different vision. The vision was living solidarity inside and outside. So, my connection, I don't know.
We can hear you.
Yeah, it's working again. Okay, okay. There was a vision which said living solidarity inside and outside the community, creating a sustainable life, and relying on social encounters. And that was the founding group in 2015. They were really intense and had a lot of ideas and like a lot of good ideas and a lot of energy. And so that's how we realized all these cooperations with cinemas, with theaters, with all kinds of corporations. They have really, I think, 5 or 6 different corporations, and also have, for example, 4 apartments for refugees that they run together with a social organization. They also organized with sociocracy, and they own this whole building together. We developed it together with them with a developer, and they bought it also from this developer before moving in. And that's what the building looks like. And it was quite ambitious because we erected the whole building as a timber structure. So it's made starting from the first floor. It's all nearly everything is done in wood, which made it quite it's still a little bit more expensive in Eastern Austria to build housing in wood. So it was quite complicated for us to realize this project within this system of subsidies with all these cost limits and affordable user costs, but also on this very high ecological level. Yeah, that's the 2 fronts from the building. It's 60 meters long and has these 2 narrow facades. That was the founding group after winning the competition in 2015. some pictures of workshops with this founding group. That's some of the members of the group in their old flats when we visited them to plan together with them their individual new flats. And as I mentioned before, it's a timber construction starting from the first floor. So you have this load-bearing timber walls on the outer side, this concrete structure that stabilizes the whole building in the central part of the building, and also the taps are done out of timber. We have this public ground floor and basement with 2 sunken courtyards. For example, there's a sunken courtyard with a music school situated behind it. So we always try to make basement zones more attractive and to bring some uses, some attractive uses to the basements as well. We have this public ground floor with a large event space. And here we have a circulation system, an access walkway where people can meet and put their plants to. So you get a little bit of an impression of this access walkway. And the common rooms are situated on the attic. So there's a common kitchen with a small playroom. There's a small sauna with a yoga room and a very small library. You can get an impression. And yeah, the group moved in July 2019. So they spent some months there moving in and starting all their doing the equipment of their common rooms and everything, and starting their event space, because they have this really huge event space in the ground floor. But then Corona came, so it's a little bit interrupted the whole life there, and also this cultural zone and this event space. They had a lot of concerts in the first months in this function room in the ground floor, and seminars and so on. And they have, whenever you come to Vienna and Corona restrictions allow it, I can really recommend to go to Gleis 21 and have go to a concert or to a small theater piece or something there. Yeah, and that's what it looks like in the evening when lights are on. Yeah, I will come to an end in 5 minutes, I would say. I just want to share with you some practical experience from people living within these projects. So, for example, Veronica, I think she's 67 by now, and she's retired. And she's a really important person in the Wohnprojekt Wien, because she says without these people that are already retired, but they are very agile, they're still very agile. These projects wouldn't run. It wouldn't work if there were only 35-year-olds with 2 kids, because they normally don't have so much time. Heinz says he's really happy about that he sold his car and can choose now between different cars and even borrow a cargo bike when he needs one. Elizabeth says that this Mittagstisch, that this common lunch that we have in Wohnprojekt Wien, cooking once a month and for a warm meal cooking once a month and have a warm meal every day really makes sense to me. So for me too, it's really a perfect a combination to cook for 20 or 30 people and only cook once a month, and it's really cheap. Michaela mentions the solidarity aspects of the everyday life here. And maybe solidarity is also nowadays, with all these COVID restrictions, quite an important aspect, because it's really when you have to do a quarantine, I don't know in English, quarantine. I don't know, when you have to stay at home because you are a contact person or something. then it's really easy to that some neighbors care about you and cook something for you and bring you go to the supermarket for you and whatever. And Petra said that she realized at one point that she could not blame anybody for her flat anymore, because she participated in this process. So it was her fault if anything was not like she imagined. Yeah, learning from these processes and from these projects, we try to integrate these lessons learned in other projects and other levels. So from subsidized housing to non-subsidized, from a small scale to a big scale, from not easy to access to low threshold project, so easier to access, from an urban environment to a rural surrounding, and also from this more or less monofunctional housing to really mixed use buildings. And some examples from the last years, we also realized this Seestern Aspern in the 22nd district in the east of Vienna 5 years ago. We did it's not a co-housing project, but it's maybe one good example for this intention to translate some elements of co-housing to other projects. It was an intergenerational network project in Stavangergasse, where there could where intergenerational tandems could apply for 2 flats, and they could choose either they would want to live on one beside each other, or they wanted to have 2 flats in 2 different buildings, or on 2 different stores inside the same building. And we did all this distribution of the flats together with the developers, and it was really, really amazing how many people were waiting or had been waiting before for this opportunity to get 2 flats in this near each other, but they were not forced to live inside the same flat. So to be able to support each other, for example, their daughter, which was handicapped, or the father who was already 80 or something like that. So that was this project for intergenerational networks that we realized together with Trans-City architects and was finished, I think, in 2017 or 2018. And at the moment, we are also working on one very interesting project. It's named Oase Inclusive. And there we try to really make it more accessible, these participatory processes, also including refugees and families from Iraq and Afghanistan that have a positive asylum status in Austria. And to integrate them in programming and planning process, and make a low threshold project that is easier to access. And that's what it will look like. It will be completed in January next year. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.